You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and let's talk about the murder of Steve McNair, the NFL quarterback who got caught in a love-fueled murder-suicide. And I'm bringing you this story because Netflix has recently released a film called Untold, the murder of Air McNair. All right, let's revisit the details of that tragic July 4th in 2009. And we'll also take a moment to see how his family has recovered from the tragic death. Now, Steve McNair was born into humble means in Mount Olive, Mississippi on Valentine's Day of 1973. And the man was just incredibly gifted athletically. He obviously played football through his high school life, but he also played baseball and basketball, and he ran track for Mount Olive High. As a junior, he led his team as the quarterback to the state championship, but he also played the other side of the ball. As a free safety on the defense in his junior year, he intercepted 15 passes, and he had his choices of which athletic path he could pursue. He was drafted by the Seattle Mariners in 1991, but he was also offered a full-ride scholarship to the University of Florida. But here's the hitch. They wanted him at running back and not as a quarterback. So he turned down that prestigious offer and he chose instead to play quarterback at Alcorn State University. Now that's a really big deal. Alcorn State is in a lower division than the University of Florida. His time at Alcorn was one that could rival a Hollywood movie script. His first season, Steve threw for 3,641 yards and 29 touchdowns. During the final game of the regular season, Steve was hampered by a leg injury, but he just continued to play through it, leading his team down the field late in the fourth quarter. Alcorn was trailing Grambling, and Steve shouldered that win, tucking the ball under his arm and charging through the line to score the winning touchdown. Now, Steve had an even better sophomore year, and then in his senior season, he racked up 6,281 yards and 56 touchdowns. He broke more than a dozen records, and he was named an All-American. Well, in 1995, Steve was the third overall pick in the NFL draft, going to the Houston Oilers. I can't emphasize enough how groundbreaking this was. At that time, he was the highest drafted black quarterback, and he also came from a smaller college. Well, that first year of NFL ball was spent with Steve being a backup quarterback. That's not unusual. But when the team moved to Tennessee the following year, he started to emerge as a higher tier player. In 1999, just 4 years after he was drafted, Steve led the Titans to the Super Bowl. In the 2003 season, Steve was named co-MVP with Peyton Manning. But the next season was plagued with injury, and due to wording in his contract, Steve was literally locked out of his team facility. They wouldn't let him rehab there because they would have to pay him an additional $23 million if he did. Well, due to a grievance filed by the union on behalf of Steve, he was let out of his contract and picked up by the Baltimore Ravens. During his time there, he had many highlights, like the longest regular season touchdown pass in Ravens history and also an AFC North championship. But he also had lows. In 2007, Steve was arrested in Nashville for drunk driving. And here's the deal. He wasn't driving. He allowed someone to drive his car while intoxicated, and he was just riding as a passenger. But in Tennessee, that's the same thing. He was charged with DUI by consent because he allowed his drunk brother-in-law to drive his truck. Now, after a lackluster season, Steve retired from the NFL, completing 13 seasons. So that's his career, but it was his personal life that got Steve killed. While at Alcorn, Steve met Michelle in a freshman anatomy course. She was not that interested at first, but Steve didn't become discouraged and he eventually won her over. It took years though. The two married in 1997 after both had graduated from college. But during that in-between time before they were married, Steve had 2 sons with 2 other women. Michelle and Steve then went on to have 2 sons of their own. Michelle and Steve had an unconventional marriage. Michelle would spend time with the 2 boys, sometimes on a farm in Mississippi, while Steve would spend time during the football seasons in Tennessee and Baltimore. And in the months leading up to his murder, Steve's life began to unravel. It had just been 2 years since his retirement when Steve, who was 36 years old, began a relationship with a 19-year-old server named Jenny Kazemi. Now, the two met at a local Dave & Buster's restaurant where current and former Titans players would frequent, just go hang out and have a good time. And Jenny's past had trauma as well. She had immigrated from Iran at age 13 following the murder of her mother. She grew up in Florida, and in her time in Florida, she was known to be kind of a troublemaker. She would just find herself in some difficult situations, this according to her nephew and authorities who investigated Steve's death. Well, at the age of 16, she left Florida and she moved to Nashville with her 20-year-old boyfriend. In December of 2008, the two ended the 3-year relationship at nearly the same time that Jenny met Steve for the first time. It might be a coincidence. It might just be that one caused the other one to happen. Who knows? Well, Steve and Jenny, they didn't hide their attraction or the time they started to spend together. Over the 6 months before his death, Steve met her family and she met his. They vacationed in Hawaii, Las Vegas, and Florida. Jenny was telling her friends and family that Steve was going to divorce Michelle and marry her. For her birthday in May of 2009, Steve co-signed on a black Escalade for Jenny. She told friends she was making the payments, but with whose money was she making the payments, his or hers? And to be honest, it seems Steve was recklessly living in general. He's vacationing with Jenny while still married to and living on and off with Michelle. He was also dating another woman during this time, and it seems via text that there were more than just Jenny, the other woman. There seemed to be a plethora of other women that he had contact with. And all of this was catching up to Steve because Jenny had even caught Steve with that one particular woman. They were leaving his condominium in downtown Nashville when she found out. But it wasn't just girls. His relationship with his longtime friend Robert Gaddy was on the rocks as well. The friendship stretched back to Alcorn State, but in the weeks before his murder, the relationship became strained over disagreements in their shared business interests. The two had started a restaurant called Gridiron 9, but Gaddy was unhappy with the way the business was carrying forward. In fact, in the documentary, it says he didn't even want to start that business. He wanted to start a different one. And it all came to a head when they had a disagreement over a $13,000 check that both Gaddy and Steve's signatures were on. Well, all that's happening. And in need of more money and a stronger commitment, Jenny is now getting more and more frustrated, according to friends. On July 2nd, Jenny was driving that Escalade that was gifted to her in Nashville when she was pulled over for drunk driving. Steve was in the passenger seat, and the chef at Steve and Robert's restaurant was in the back seat. Now, the Escalade was registered in both Jenny and Steve's names, and Jenny was charged, but Steve and the chef were allowed to take a taxi away from the scene. Steve then showed up at the jail to bail out Jenny. Well, the arrest wasn't the only thing that had gone wrong that night. Steve only ended up with Jenny on that night after his other girlfriend said she couldn't hang out. And Jenny knew this. Well, after he bailed Jenny out, he left her and went to hang out with his other girlfriend, spending the remainder of the night at her home. Then on July 3rd, Steve and Jenny exchanged text messages while Steve was fishing with his sons. Both claimed they loved each other in the exchanged texts. Jenny also said in those text messages that she needed more money from Steve. Complying with her request, Steve transferred $2,000 to Jenny so that she could pay her phone bill and also other expenses. Jenny then that night went to her shift at Dave & Buster's, but not before meeting up with a convicted felon that she had met when she tried to sell her Kia. This after getting that birthday Escalade. Well, in Dave & Buster's parking lot, Jenny bought a 9mm handgun from that felon. During her shift, her manager could tell something just wasn't right with Jenny. Well, the manager asked Jenny, and Jenny spilled the details of the last couple of days, all about the DUI, the lack of money, the difficulties with Steve, the other girlfriend. All those things came out, and she ended the convo by saying, "My life is just crap and I should end it." Well, that holiday night eve, after she had been at work, Steve put his 2 sons to bed and then texted Jenny saying he was coming to check on her at his condo. Jenny's not at her house. She's at Steve's condo. And whatever occurred over the next few minutes, who knows? But at some point, it is alleged that Steve fell asleep on the couch of the condominium that he owned. Authorities believe Jenny used the gun that she had just purchased to shoot Steve twice in the chest and twice in the head. They then believe Jenny sat down on the couch next to Steve's body and shot herself in the temple. Now, following the shot, it is believed Jenny slumped forward and fell to the floor with the gun partially trapped beneath her body. A short time later, a friend of Steve's, named Wayne Neely, showed up at the condo looking for Steve. His SUV was outside, so he figured Steve was inside. And Wayne is a partial renter or owner of the condo. He's got that deal worked out with Steve because they're friends. But once he sees the dead bodies, he doesn't call 911. Instead, he leaves the condo after discovering the bodies and he calls Robert Gaddy. Now, those two together return to the condo, and it's Robert Gaddy who calls the authorities. In the documentary, portions of Wayne's initial interview with police show him with a handful of cash that he is almost presenting to the detectives. He then says he knows a lot of police officers. Then he starts to pull various bills from the wad of cash and says, "I'm not sure how this works." One of the detectives interrupts saying, "You don't have to pay us." Then Wayne shakes his head and says, "You're worth at least $20, as he puts all of that cash back in his pocket. Now, I'll leave it up to you to determine what Wayne was insinuating there. I just need you to keep in mind, this is hours after they delay a call to 911, and Steve McNair is dead in his condo, and it's a condo he shares with Steve McNair, and also there's a woman dead there, and the police aren't really sure exactly what's going on. Kind of a weird look. All right, so despite it looking like a murder-suicide, authorities are also looking into other leads, and they start to focus on Keith Norleet. Okay, that's Jenny's boyfriend that she had just broken up with 6 months earlier, right when she met Steve McNair. Now, in the documentary, Keith admits he was a jealous man and that he had made vague references about the relationship on his MySpace account. He's a big fan of McNair, and now his ex-girlfriend that he still loves is dating Steve McNair. That's going to be a little weird for him. But Keith was never charged with anything involving Steve's murder. And ultimately, it was ruled that Steve was murdered by Jenny and that Jenny then took her own life. But not everyone believes that's exactly what happened. Jenny's family has consistently raised questions about the scene. They point to the fact that Jenny had never fired a gun before, yet she could brutally shoot Steve, a man she claimed to love, and not just shoot him once, but shoot him 4 times. And her friends and family also say she wasn't spiraling out of control. Others have also stated that the felon that Jenny bought the gun from, well, they say he was obsessed with her. In fact, they exchanged texts and phone calls well over 200 times in those days leading up to the murder. And family and friends believe he should have been pursued as a potential suspect. Now, in the documentary, it is posed that Steve had some questionable friends as well, and that those people should be considered. When asked if the case should be reopened, Steve's former coach, Jeff Fisher, said, "Everyone should just let it go," clearly indicating he is not interested in digging up the past. Now, absent from the documentary was Michelle. She has spent the years after Steve's death out of the public eye and giving nearly 0 interviews. She did tell ESPN that she did not know about Jenny or Steve's other girlfriend or girlfriends. She said she knew he was involved in questionable activities, but she didn't know about the other women. She did tell Titans Online that she can explain one thing to her sons. She said the following: "I can't tell our boys everything about being a man, but I can tell them about being respectful and humble and also how to treat people the way they should be treated. I always tell them, no matter what, your father loved you." She also told the Tennessean that she had told her boys they should pursue their passions, even if those passions include something besides sports. And Steve's boys, with Michelle, have done exactly that. Their son Tyler left a potential collegiate athletic career to become a dancer. He quit conventional sports his senior year and began taking ballet classes. He had been dancing to relieve stress for several years, but it was nothing formal. See, he would end his basketball practice and then he'd spend a couple of hours in the high school dance studio all by himself. He's now gone on to study at NYU Tisch Dance and is now modeling and dancing professionally. His brother plays basketball for Palm Beach Atlantic University. And Michelle told ESPN the following: "I can't say that I didn't have my bitter moments and that I still don't sometimes, but I'm not going to hell blaming somebody or having the hate and animosity in my heart. I'm not going to do it." Again, that documentary is on Netflix. You can find it there. It's a pretty good quick watch. Well, sometimes the night of your dreams can end in the worst of ways, and that happened for a 24-year-old woman from Slovakia last week. All right, this all went down on Saturday, August 17th, when Macklemore was playing a 10-song set list at the Bratislava's Love Stream Festival in Slovakia. Now, during his signature song, Downtown, Macklemore brought the female fan up on stage. Video of the event shows her jumping around and then singing the lyrics with Macklemore's arms slung around her shoulder. Now, although being that public on a concert stage with Macklemore might have been a top 10 moment of her life, it also allowed thousands of people to witness her on that stage. And then also, because she was so exhilarated, she bragged about the moment on social media. That's understandable, unless you're wanted by the law. See, the 24-year-old was already in trouble with the law for running shirtless on the field of a 2019 soccer match. She also, according to TMZ, has a list of other crimes that landed her in prison for a short amount of time. Her current alleged lawbreaking was not revealed by law enforcement, but they did say that a, quote, concerned citizen called the police when she recognized the woman on the stage with Macklemore. She was then arrested. And that wasn't the only crazy thing that happened that weekend. The entire crowd was evacuated just hours before Macklemore's performance due to intense rainfall and thunder and lightning. Macklemore wrote on his social media that about 25,000 drenched fans returned when the weather cleared up. He said they had all gone too far to turn back, and when the weather gods provided a window, they took it. He said that there is something about when a show almost gets canceled, how you then appreciate every moment on stage even more. He told the fans that they were alive, soaked, and yet they gave it their all. And a quick side note, Macklemore will be returning to the States and will be performing in his hometown of Seattle, Washington in November. And a quick update to the November 13th, 2022 murders near the campus of University of Idaho. Grad student Brian Kohberger is awaiting trial for the brutal slayings of students Ethan Chopin, Xana Cornoto, Maddie Mogan, and Kaylee Gonsalves. The four were stabbed in the girls' off-campus house, while two other roommates were left unharmed. 7 weeks after that quadruple homicide, 28-year-old Kohberger was apprehended at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, and he has been charged with the murders. He is set to go to trial next year in June. Well, last week, a healing garden was opened in memory of the four students. The garden is located just blocks from the area where the house once stood. That home was demolished late last year, more than 1 year after the murders. Now, the university said in a statement that the garden is a deep reflection of the students and how much they have cared about the project. The statement says the garden is a legacy that will outlast any of the lifetimes of those who have worked on it, and that the student-led project shows the dedication, care, and resilience of the student body. It was the College of Art and Architecture that designed and built the memorial. Well, locals and students, they were mixed in their emotions about the demolition of the house where the students were killed. Some felt the house should remain until justice is served in the murders. But according to the New York Post, school officials, who were the owners of the house, called the structure a grim reminder of the heinous acts that took place there. So where does the Kohberger trial stand right now? The defense is claiming Kohberger was nowhere near the U of I off-campus house on that November night. They say he was instead on a late-night drive miles away in Washington state. The defense last week filed a motion that the mob mentality of the community in Moscow, Idaho, requires the trial to be moved to Ada County in western Idaho, where the capital city of Boise is located. Now, this would be the exact same courthouse where Chad and Lori Daybell were individually found guilty of murdering Chad's wife, Tammy, and Lori's children, JJ and Tylee. The defense presented findings from a telephone survey that was conducted by a defense expert. They say the results revealed hostility toward Kohberger by Latah County residents. One person responded to the survey by saying that there would likely be a riot if Kohberger was not found guilty. The defense is blaming inaccurate and inflammatory media coverage in Latah County, and that coverage has tainted the jury pool. Well, the state doesn't want to move the trial to Ada County. They would prefer to move to a neighboring county, but the defense says that county is exposed to the same unfair media coverage. They cited in that motion that residents of Nez Perce County have been exposed to 36% of the media coverage that Latah County is exposed to, and that they are 10 times more likely to encounter the coverage of the case than residents of Ada County. Now, the location of the trial will be determined later this week. One thing isn't clear in this case, though. A motive for the killing of the 4 students has yet to be established. Now, there's lots of online speculation that have led people to believe that Kohberger was obsessed with Maddie and Kaylee. But like I said, this is just online speculation. I'm always keeping a watchful eye on this case, and I'll let you know as more information becomes available. And now this quick story out of Atwater, California, where a principal decided that a pep rally should be conducted like a club party. Now, the alleged and perceived impropriety happened at a back-to-school pep rally on August 16th. Students, of course, had phones, and video of the school function in the high school gym shows Buhok Colony High School principal Robert Nunez wearing a school baseball jersey. So not like a real one, but the kind that would be sold to fans, like, gear from the school. Well, the 40-second video that went viral shows Robert sitting in an office chair in the middle of the gym floor. As the song Pony by Genuine plays, the mascot dances towards Robert as he lays back with his arms behind his head. And if you don't know the song Pony, let me just read you the lyrics from the chorus. Here's how it goes. And I can't believe I'm reading this, but here's how it goes. If you're horny, let's do it. Ride it, my pony. My saddle's waiting. Come and jump on it. If you're horny, let's do it. Ride it, my pony. My saddle's waiting. Come and jump on it. All right. Well, after the mascot, which is the Thunder, but it's basically just a guy in a yellow and black uniform with a gigantic, over-exaggerated head. Well, after the mascot dances around Robert, he shoots off a handheld cannon from his hip. So you can't really see the cannon, and the cannon is full of gold confetti. I'll just let you decide what that represents. He then jumps up and switches places with the mascot. Robert then puts his hands on the mascot's chest and slides them down the front of the costumed person. Well, at that point, several kids run from the sidelines and swarm the mascot and Robert. When the principal is asked by someone holding a microphone if he has anything to say, he yells into the microphone, "What happens at Buhok stays at Buhok." He then wheels the mascot off the floor in the office chair. Now that I've explained the video, just give it a watch here on YouTube.
What happens in Buhok stays in Buhok.
Now, once the video was shared throughout the community, Robert was put on administrative leave just 3 days after the back-to-school event. Vivian Fuentes, now she's the director of communications for the school district, she said in a statement that the district is conducting a comprehensive review of the situation. And while the investigation is ongoing, Principal Nunez will not be participating in any school-related responsibilities or activities. All right, I don't know what you're feeling right now, but feelings seem to be mixed about the pep rally in the community. Some parents felt that Robert's behavior was out of touch and inappropriate, but others jumped to his defense, saying he was just having fun with the kids. Now, if you want to watch the dance, it will be played on the YouTube broadcast of this podcast. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. Thank you so much for being here with me. I hope you're having a fabulous day. And if you're loving the content, the best thing you can do is share it with a friend. That way the podcast can grow. And we always love 5-star reviews and positive comments. That helps as well, and it's free. And you can also like and follow on all of our social media and YouTube accounts here at Ono Media. That's Into the Dark, Murder with My Husband, and of course, Rise in Crime. You can join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.